Hi everybody. So I have really crashed about these Jerusalem artichokes, these sunchokes. I feel like for the last 2 days I was just like high as a fucking kite. Like I was just like on this emotional high. I was just like literally buzzing. I like couldn't focus on anything. I was just like on, it was like I had, 50 shots of caffeine or something. And I was just like so jazzed. And then today I've been sitting down here in this little corner scrubbing artichoke roots. Got this nice big bucket of roots I've been scrubbing and spending most of the day down here scrubbing roots. And God, they're so beautiful. Especially the ones that have like little sprouts on them that are pink. Oh, I feel like it's like I just keep like washing them, and then they're so fucking beautiful. I just like want to kiss everyone. Yeah, and I just like crashed. I don't know. I just went down from like elated to like fucking depressed, like really depressed about these roots. And I was like sitting here with it for like 30 minutes, and then I called over one of my landmates to talk about it and kind of worked it out a little bit. But I just, like, I feel nauseous, actually, about these Jerusalem artichokes, where, sorry, the wind. Yeah, and I think just like all this stuff about camas has just got me like thinking back a lot to when I was studying ethnobotany in college, and it's a long time ago. It was like, I was a very young version of myself, and I haven't really thought about it in a long time. So I'm going back and just finding myself remembering what that was like. And with this Jerusalem artichoke stuff, it's like suddenly this plant feels like the biggest indigenous erasure that I think I've ever come upon in the plant world in my life. And it's like hitting me like a bus. So I just went down into a really dark place about it. Yeah, so it's like ethnobotany. I don't know how ethnobotany is all over the world, in academia and outside of academia, because, I only had my academic experience with it in the Pacific Northwest, which is a very specific and special place. Like, my classes were like inside a longhouse built on a state college, like very unusual, where like native members of the community came to the property of the college in order to strip the bark of the western red cedar trees that were planned to be cut down for school buildings to be built, and like there were like indigenous faculty members working in the longhouse, and it was like a mix of native and non-native students in the class and stuff like that. And like I know that the Pacific Northwest is like very special in that way, and that's not how it is on the East Coast here at all, and I'm sure that's not how it is all over the world. So it was definitely unique. But like in those texts about ethnobotany of the Pacific Northwest, like the curriculum is, so what I would say is like ethnobotany as a field is basically the long study of racism through the lens of plants, right? So like one of the fundamental pieces of the curriculum is that like, oh, white colonists came over, they didn't see rectangular rows of annual plants like they expected to see in Europe. Therefore, they decided that native people weren't tending plants, they weren't doing any form of agriculture, therefore like they didn't have any cultural sophistication. and therefore, not only is it not worth writing down, and being curious about, but also then, like, that stuff became reason or evidence for, like, oh, these people, like, don't deserve to have the land because they're not using it. They're not being, they're not putting it to use with agriculture. They're, that whole story where it became, like, reason for taking the land and, like, shitting all over these cultures, basically. So, like, that's the curriculum, it's like over and over and over and over again. That was, like, drilled into my head as this young person, where it's just like, okay, wow, yeah, like, Europeans didn't see straight rows like they thought, and so much about indigenous land tending practices all over the world was missed because, yeah, some of the first, white conquerors didn't see it, didn't record it, and therefore now, we are looking with fresh eyes and realizing how much indigenous communities really were doing sophisticated land tending practices, and now let's piece together, everything we can about what was done and appreciate it, like, we mainly being, like, white academic people. So it's just like I'm thinking back to that, of, like, a decade or so ago. Just like, Jesus Christ, like, that's the, that's like the basis of walking into that field. You get used to it. I got used to it after a while, but now it's like, like, on the West Coast, like, Camas has such a culture around it. Like, it has still to this day, like, such cultural appreciation, such, like, cultural holding of that plant. Like, that was very obvious to me at the time. I'm just like, wow, this is really special. This is really important. This is, like, sacred, and, like, it's like, like, chokes me up to think about it, and, like, and how much was lost, when, those camas fields were, like, taken over by settlers, and, just like how much beauty and importance was lost. So it's like here on the East Coast, like, I'm an East Coastie. I have been almost all my life. And, like, things are very different here than the West Coast. Like, it's just like the erasure is so much thicker or something, like, it's just because it was colonized here so much earlier, So it's like it's hitting me really hard right now that, like, Jerusalem artichoke, aka sunchoke, aka sunroot, aka tuberous sunflower, like, is historically an indigenous food throughout a lot of this continent, a lot of it. And there's record of that, like, there is literature, there are tidbits here and there. Like, this whole thing about, like, the long cooking, like, it's not complicated. It's, like, fucking simple. It's fucking simple. It's just, like, cook it for 48 hours, period. You can write that in one sentence. It's fucking simple. And, just the fact that, like, oh, then Jerusalem artichoke became this exciting plant in permaculture, the field of permaculture, which is in and of itself, like, an extremely whitewashed field, which, like, I got sucked into as a young person, like, oh, this is so great, permaculture is so great, and, like, over time, it just, like, made me sick, now, like, even the word permaculture, I'm just like, oh my fucking god, even though, like, a lot of what I do and the way I garden and stuff like that, like, could be called permaculture, but it's just like, after a while, after I started to just become a little bit less naive over and over, which I'm still naive and like I'm still kind of like thick as mud in a lot of these ways. So it's slow. It's like a really slow, agonizing process. So like I was really jazzed about Jerusalem artichoke, and even before I met the plant and started gardening with it, I was really fixated on this plant. So like this is like at least a 10-year long fixation, you know. I'm just really drawn to this plant. I'm interested in this plant. And many people are into this plant in the field of permaculture. And it just makes me balk right now how normalized it has become to like talk about this plant as fartichoke and like ha ha ha, how do you eat it, and like 101 million blog posts and article posts and bits of writing and books and videos, and oh my god, there's probably thousands of them. You know, people being like, oh, you know, like, how do you eat this plant? It's such a useless plant, or it's an interesting plant, and here's this other cute recipe, and here's this other cute recipe I tried, but it still makes me fart, and, you know, how the heck do you eat this plant? Blah, 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 blah. You know, like, that's so normal. And right now, I'm just, like, feeling it with a fresh, I don't know, with, like, fresh cells in my body or something, and it makes me sick. Like, I feel nauseous about it. You know, that, like, somehow that became okay. And like there's literature, there's evidence, it's written, you know, that like as an indigenous food, Jerusalem artichoke was cooked for a long time to transform it, you know. And like somehow it's just been normal for whoever over time to just like read that, hear that, be like, oh, isn't that quaint? And like ignore it or something, or just like let it brush aside, such that like this cooking method is not mainstream with this plant. You know, like I'm a plant dork. Like I have some really dorky plant friends in my networks and have for a long time. I hang out with super plant dorks. Like I go down wormholes, and the fact that like it's taken me 10 years to really like ram straight up against this whole 48 hours of cooking to, you know, to convert inulin into fructose thing, like I feel like that kind of says something, because clearly, you know, there's other people who know about this, other people who do it. But for some reason, it's just not talked about. It's just not out there in a big way. You know, and so now it has to be like white people doing rewilding and permaculture and blah 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 to be like, oh, we finally discovered, you know, how to cook Jerusalem artichoke. Aren't we clever? You know, ha 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 ha. It's just like, oh my god, like, oh my god, like, yeah. So that's just like what's hitting me. You know, it's just like, oh my god, like the disrespect, you know. It's just like I feel myself like breaking apart today, like cracking up. So yeah, anyway, it's like, you know, it's like suddenly Jerusalem artichoke has just dropped from this place of like, oh, like a curiosity plant and like a garden plant, a permaculture plant, you know, sort of just, you know, a light quality plant. All of a sudden, you know, for me, it's gone from there to just like, boom, to just like, what an incredibly sacred plant this is. And like, it's almost like a plant that helps me orient to this land, to like I don't even know how to say it yet. I don't like, it's like, I think it's just still gonna like it's still coming, but it's like all of a sudden I feel this reverence and this weight that was totally not there at all for me before. Like I almost feel like I'm walking into holy land, you know, like I'm walking onto holy ground. You know, on something so simple and commonplace. So that's what I mean when I said that, like, I feel like I have walked into the greatest example of indigenous erasure in plants that I ever have in my life. That's what I mean, because it's like something that's literally been right under my nose. It's been right in my face for so long. and in the faces of so many plant people and gardeners and permaculture people and earth skills people, like Jerusalem artichoke, like it's literally this bright sunny disc, like it's a fucking sunflower, it's like showy, it's this bright disc like the sun that is bright yellow, that like just right in your face, like it's a very like right in your face plant, and it's and it's common and hardy and easy to grow, and it's just like it's right there, so for it to be right there for so long, and like for something to be that in your face and to be invisible at the same time, to me, like it's staggering, like that's the most sinister kind of cultural erasure, to my understanding. It's like that you can do away with a culture so much, and it's like I remember when I was probably in my early 20s, I was in the North Georgia mountains, where I have this like family cabin at the time, and it's like it's what home is to me, and I was just starting to like really be in. I don't know. I had been interested in like Jerusalem artichoke and hopness. And I remember I was going around to these little backwoods nurseries, just like in the middle of nowhere, and driving around. And I was at one, and I had to like wind through all these roads, and it's this little nursery way in the woods, and and like naively, I'm like asking like these old timers there, like, do you have any Jerusalem artichoke? Like, do you have any of this plant, Apios americana? And they're like, what are you talking about? And a lot of them kind of teased me, and like they meant it in a good-natured way, but they would tease me on like, are you expecting hard times? Like, why do you want these plants for? Or they'd be like, one guy was like, like that Jerusalem artichoke plant, like I think there used to be some growing down in the ditch there along the road years ago. I don't know if it's still there anymore. Like, as if like, why do you want that plant for? So they would give me a hard time. Like, you expecting hard times or something? Like, what do you want these survival plants for? Which is a whole other note, where it's like, we should always be expecting hard times, because hard times always come, because change is always happening. And there are good times, and then there are bad times, and then there are good times, and there are bad times, and that's how life works. Like, so there's a level of like American Western like exceptionalism, in its prime right there. But aside from that, like back to the other thing, it's just like how innocent in a way that kind of banter is in our culture, and then how the extreme sludgy underside of that at the same time, which is basically saying like, oh, in our culture, in literature, over time, it became accepted and normalized that like these plants don't have value. They have no value, because they're savage foods. Like we don't even want to eat those. Like, it's not about taste. It's not about practicality. It's not about anything practical at all. It's about racism, right? It's about like, oh, that's the food of a dirtier or less deserving race of people, whoever it is. And this happens all over the world, all the time, right? So like, therefore, we're not going to acknowledge any value to that plant, and even ridicule it, and just kind of let it fall away. So, it's just like stuff like this can be and seem innocent, and then also just like right now for me, it just really doesn't. I really can't feel one shred of innocence to it right now. But yeah, so it was a high and a low. So I'm sharing about it because I think it's worthwhile. I just think it's significant. I feel like there's value in me sharing about it, even if I'm messy and all over the place about it. yeah, and I hope more people, do more with this process, with this plant, with this Jerusalem artichoke. Like, I hope people do this cooking method and love the plant and grow it more and start thinking about it in different ways now, and allow that to like completely upend and expand our understanding of things. But at least for me, inevitably, like, I think it's opening up a lot of layers that also are pretty dark, and hitting me hard. So just to reiterate that, to make it really clear, like, I am happy about this information and this experience, and I'm grateful for it. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm happy for other people to just start experimenting with this more. The possible transition of Jerusalem artichoke to, at least in future generations, gradually, I think, like a perennial staple food again. I can feel that possibility, and I'm excited for that. And like, I can certainly sense how I think this plant is going to keep changing me. I can tell that the way that I am around it, the way that I might be processing it, the way that I might be eating it, the way that I might be presenting it or talking about it or sharing it with the world, I can feel is changing. Like, I literally, like, the sensation I feel is on the bottom of my feet, actually, is where I feel this very odd, very strong sensation. It's in my feet that are, like, right now on the ground. But it's definitely, yeah, it's like a great ship turning or something, So I don't think I'm ever going to be able to just talk about, like, Jerusalem artichoke, the permaculture plant, ever again, probably. Yeah, because it feels like this old window now, this like old window into an older time that now like has an artery, like a vein of blood now connected into this one, now pouring into me a little bit and changing my blood a little bit. And like, inevitably that's opening back up more layers of grief and genocide issue, layers of all kinds of things about genocide that are in my body, that are in other people's body, that are in this culture as a whole culture, that are worldwide. So yeah, it's like, it's a simple thing, and then it's also like a pretty big thing all at once. Yeah, I think I'll stop there because I think I got the point across. But I was just sharing this. I think I'm just going to keep moving through it, to be honest. It's a pretty day here again. All right, closing it up for today. Thanks for listening. Bye.